Hello, and welcome to today's Energy Magazine exclusive author interview. I'm Katherine Krupka, Executive Director of the Energy Medicine Professional Association, and your host for a conversation I know you are going to love. We're talking with the esteemed and pioneering medical intuitive author, teacher, and researcher, Wendie Colter. Wendie's practiced medical intuition professionally for more than 20 years. She's the CEO and founder of the Practical Path, through which she offers intuitive development programs to clinical health professionals, complementary practitioners, and really anyone who's interested. She's spoken and been an instructor at some of the premier integrative health centers in the United States and is also author of an award-winning book called The Essentials of Medical Intuition, A Visionary Path to Wellness. I'll also share that my personal experience is of Wendie as someone who beautifully bridges the feeling and the clinical, who lives and teaches mind-body balance, and who's really committed to seeing intuition take its rightful and respected place in both the complementary and mainstream healing worlds. Wendie, welcome, welcome. It's a joy to be talking with you again.
Hi, Katherine. Thank you so much for having me again. Lovely to
Yeah.
be here.
Awesome. So, Wendie, let's start with this term medical intuition, right? As healer types, a lot of our readers are familiar with general intuition, but this is pretty specific. Talk to us a little bit about how you define medical intuition and how it's really helpful to people, especially in mainstream healthcare.
Well, thank you for that. Medical intuition is not a modality. One of the biggest misunderstandings about medical intuition is that it is a healing practice. It is not a healing practice. And that's really interesting, right? Energy healers may use it, and medical doctors and nurses may use it, but it is separate in that it is an assessment skill. So it's a way to evaluate the physical body, meaning the physiology and the anatomy, and also the energetics of the biofield, which is the chakra system, the auric field. Both of those things can be assessed and evaluated with the skills of medical intuition. And that stands alone from actually affecting or manipulating or anything else with the biofield or the physical body, which is why I call medical intuition a foundational skill set rather than a modality. And that kind of bears out in the programs I teach because we have healing professionals from health coaches and massage therapists to PAs, RNs, and MDs and everything in between. And it works in all of those cases. It works in all of those arenas because it is this sort of, as I said, foundational way to view the body and to interact with the body.
So I'm understanding from what you're saying, I love the distinction that it's an assessment tool versus a modality. And also, what I think I'm hearing is that you're collecting information from the physiology and the biofield.
Correct. And what's interesting about that information is it's not, well, certainly Western medicine can collect information from the physiology the way they do with MRIs and testing and all the rest of that. And energetically, there's lots of ways to assess with hands and things like that. A lot of energy healers do that. Medical intuition is in my experience and in my opinion also, is a much more refined way of getting to the detail of not only the physical imbalance, which means I can see into the body down to the cellular level, but also where something may have manifested from. So that's the emotional, spiritual, mental life history. And that brings a full picture of what's going on for the body, the mind, the spirit, not just the body or just the energy. And that's why I feel medical intuition is really this missing piece in healthcare of all kinds.
Wow. So, really something that allows us to see into that whole storyline almost, right?
Yeah.
Especially if we're of the thought where something might generate from the energy field or from thought before it manifests in the physical body. You probably see it. It's like you're connecting all of the dots back to the point of origin is what I think I'm hearing.
That's exactly right. The premise here is that the body holds and stores information, right? Not just physical information, which it will do, but also all of these other pieces, emotional, mental, spiritual life history. That information is the genesis of a health issue, right? So when you think about a health issue, if you're only looking at it from the Western medicine perspective, you're looking at symptoms and symptomology and pathology and all of those things, like what's happening physically, but you're not looking at the necessarily the root cause. And if you think about the root cause as something that can manifest from trauma or imbalance in some way, and these things energetically move forward and can engender a physical imbalance. It's like going backwards, following the trail backwards. And then you can really get to the root cause. There's a lot of research on this. It's not just medical intuitives who've seen this. There's research on adverse childhood experiences, which there's years, decades of research on, that the premise of which is early life trauma can lead to later life health issues. When medical intuitives saw that, we scratched our head and went, yeah. But science is, yes, it can happen. And it's not just genetics, it's actually environment and emotional and spiritual energetic causes. What's really happening here? We want to see the whole thing. There's also epigenetics, right? That's inherited trauma through the DNA. And again, medical intuitives have seen that. You can also talk about past life trauma coming forward. That's certainly legitimate in the energy from the energy perspective, even though Western medicine hasn't figured that one out yet.
When
But
they
we
do,
also,
we'll all get to scratch our heads again.
yeah, we've been looking at that for a long time. Also, the other piece of it is the science called psychoneuroimmunology and psychoendocrine immunology, if I have that word right. And these are new branches of science and medicine that are saying that our mind affects our nervous system and our immune system. There's a good thought. And
We never
again,
thought of that.
look, that's the way things go here,
I know.
is that science has to catch up. That sounds very arrogant to say, but because I'm actually a strong believer in medical science and science in general. And we want that scientific method, but if it's the only thing that you think is valid, then people are missing so much, right?
Sure. So I'm intrigued, and I know our readers will be too, how you got started in all of this. I feel like I remember reading that your own healing was part of your journey with discovering medical intuition and making the choice to start codifying and scientifically approaching it. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, there's really two origin stories for me. The first one was when I was doing a lot of energy healing 20 something years ago. And I noticed that some of my clients would have wonderful healings. I do the same practice every time on everyone. It wasn't that my modality changed, but some people would have great healings and some people would be really stuck with something that they felt was just was challenging to let go of. And like many, many energy practitioners, I would be, when I do my work, I'd get these really good hits, intuitive hits. And I go, ooh, something's going on about your mother. What's going on here? And I would mention it, but I really didn't go beyond that because the job was to heal, right? To move energy to help my client engender a healing. And when I had a client that had really sticky stuff there that just wasn't budging, I remember asking her if I could just see if I could just get more hits, if I could just see more. And she said, sure. And I sat down and I meditated and I looked into her because I was already seeing into the body. I already had that visual thing going and I could see into their physiology and I could see into their anatomy. And I said, I wonder if I could do this more. So I did. And I sat there for almost an hour. I guess it was about an hour. And I just said, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this. It looks like that might have come from here. It looks like ba 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 bing ba boom. What is the body asking for? It wants a little more of that, a little less of that. And she was blown away. And at the end of that, I said, well, would you like a healing? And she said, sure. And so I started doing my usual process and she was letting go. I was like, woof, letting go
Wow.
of stuff like a superhighway and stuff that had been stuck for her for decades, if not a lifetime. And she looked at me, she said, whatever you just did, that was powerful. And I realized that what I did, even though I didn't have a name for it back then, was medical intuition. It was the skill of assessing before you do any healing work. And what happened for her was she allowed more healing to come through because it came to her conscious mind.
Yes.
The bottom line for this is a quote from Dr. Dean Ornish, which when I read it, I don't know, well, that's it. He said, awareness is the first step in healing. And where is that in our medical paradigm? It doesn't exist. I mean,
Yeah.
awareness of a diagnosis, sure, but awareness of where it came from, why it's there, what is its message, what does the body want, what does the spirit want? There's so much information, and it's all contained in our wonderful bodies and biofields.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I can imagine where after that you were hooked.
What really hooked me was the fact that my clients were telling their doctors, and their doctors started calling me clandestinely. Can you look at another patient for me? I'm like, sure. And that's when I realized that something big is going on here. And actually, that was about the point I thought to myself, I really should be teaching these people, these
Mhm.
doctors. I'm happy to consult, but I tell you what, they already kind of get it. They just they don't have a context for it. Certainly the medical world was taking its time to come around, but there's more signs now than
Yeah.
ever that it is actually starting to embrace this.
Ooh. Um,
Yeah, I can talk about that.
I please do. I think our folks would love this.
Yeah, the article I wrote for Energy Magazine was about medical intuition in healthcare, and I mean mainstream healthcare, right? Or as mainstream as you can get with this kind of thing. And the National Organization for Medical Intuition, which I'm the president of, we just incorporated 2 years ago. And the very first thing that we did, and we're nonprofit, by the way, the very first thing we did was to do some research asking professional medical intuitives how they do their work and if they work in healthcare at all and how specifically. And I got to tell you, no one has ever thought to even ask that question of medical intuitives. And it's been a kind of a taboo question anyway, because who's going to talk about it, right? Um, so the medical intuitives were very forthcoming, and our research showed through the surveys we did that 82% of medical intuitives directly assist licensed healthcare professionals with medical intuition services. Now that is a crazy number, right? We didn't expect anything like that. We're like 20% maybe.
Mm-mm.
82% of them said, yeah, I do this. And I'm like, well, okay, then I was right. It's like my experience wasn't atypical, right?
Yep.
86% of them said that they receive referrals from licensed healthcare providers. Again, that didn't surprise me because that's what I'd been getting over the years. And 30% of them themselves were licensed healthcare providers, which I thought was astounding,
Nice.
astounding. So we want more light shed, excuse me, on this field and how it interacts with mainstream healthcare. And that is what the National Organization for Medical Intuition was set up to do. So I want to just give a shout out and say that anyone and everyone can join us as a member in some fashion. You can be a supporting member if you're someone who's worked with a medical intuitive and you've really gotten a lot of value out of it. Please join us and support our cause and our mission. If you are a professional medical intuitive, go to the website and take a look at our criteria and please join us. We'd love to have you. The more the merrier. And this is, even though it's a national organization, we have members from all over the world, and we're looking to raise the profile. So our research is part of that. And we're going to do more research. We are reaching out to healthcare organizations saying we have this wonderful database of professional medical intuitives that are vetted by us and ready to work. And so, fingers crossed.
Wow. Well, so you've touched on some really remarkable and valuable things. I know that really a big part of your mission is to bring this out of I don't know, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but like out of the shadows and into full awareness in the medical field, in the alternative field, just generally.
Yeah,
And
you can
and
say out of the shadows.
and by really systematizing the very rigorous training programs that you put together, by establishing and helping head the National Organization for Medical Intuition, and participating in the various research projects that you all are involved in, That really is, that's raising the bar in a very substantial way. You've talked a bit about the research among the intuitives, but I'd love to hear a little about the research about the process or about the result of medical intuition and the validation that really brings to the field.
Yeah, we're in process with a new study, and I have to tell you, people are coming out of the woodwork telling me that they want to study more. More research on medical intuition is happening, which is very exciting. This particular study, we are researching the concept, that the actual activity of a medical intuitive, a doctor, and a patient together, and the medical intuitive doing their process with the doctor having opportunity to ask questions as well. And we're going to see how that comes out. We're still in process with that, and research takes a long time. It just takes time. So hopefully we'll get some great results out of that. But regardless, I keep getting approached by people saying, hey, we want to do more research on this and in that. I'll tell you what I'm interested in for anyone who's listening who might have resources.
Yeah.
I would like to see a research study done on long COVID with medical intuitives and other health issues that are challenging for the Western medicine sphere to handle. Those are typically the kind of patients that not patients, clients that medical intuitives would receive. People who've been just haven't had the opportunity through Western medicine, mainstream medicine, to find answers because it's challenging. There's maybe not enough evidence base. There may not be enough protocols from that perspective, Western medicine perspective, but from the medical intuitive perspective, we can see a lot of what's going on and we can query the body on what it's really asking for. And long COVID seems to be a real opportunity for this because it's so persistent and there's a lot of it, going around.
Absolutely, Wendy. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. And your information will be available to people who listen. So if anybody does have resources or an idea of where that kind of research might be being done or who might be interested, please get in touch with Wendy for sure. I'd love to talk a little bit about your book. I really feel that as a lot of our readers are mostly practitioners, that the mix of information in your now four-time award-winning book, yay, bridges a lot of different pieces, right? There's the research part, there's the mind body part, there's tapping into those deep nuances where we're identifying that intuitive information and then applying it in a mainstream medical sphere. It could be mind-boggling, and it's not. You've put it together in a really remarkable way. So maybe there's something from your book that you think our readers might find particularly wow or particularly interesting?
What was interesting to me, I'm not sure what readers would find interesting. I hope all of it. But what was really fascinating to me was the history of medical intuition, because until I started digging into it, I had no idea, right? You're talking about out of the shadows. I just have to say that. Look, medical intuition has been around, as the idea of it, the concept of it, has probably been around as long as there are human beings, right? Intuitive human beings, which we all are, using our intuition in these various ways. But it wasn't until the 1700s, the mid to late 1700s, with the rise of the practices of Franz Mesmer, who was a real interesting man who developed magnet therapy and certain forms of energy work, until he was quite famous at the time in Europe and really had an influence. He, in a nutshell, when someone, and a lot of physicians and scientists started doing his practices as well. So what they found was, when they mesmerized, so to speak, their patients, put them in a hypnotic state, these people could identify their own illnesses, and they could also identify their own cures, all right, like treatments, right? And they could do it for themselves and they could do it for other people. And there's documented history on this. And it went all the way through the 1800s into the mid to late 1800s. And at that point, and there's a lot of research on it, research and writing on it, which I wrote about in my book and referenced. It's fascinating history. They called them somnambulists because they were in this sort of trance state, very similar to
Mhm.
Edgar Cayce, I think.
Yep.
And then, of course, Edgar Cayce came around in the early 1900s, and then Carolyn Mace and others. But in the early 1900s, there was a big pushback from the scientific world on anything having to do with energy practices, of which this was one, even though it wasn't called that. And they really did everything they could to stomp it out. And
Pretty good job.
osteopathy, yeah, there were many things that the homeopathy, all of that in that
Right.
1800s, late 1800s, really got sidelined. And they wanted to look at the body as mechanical. It's like an engine that might break down, and how do you fix it? There's nothing wrong with that way of looking at it. But if you discount everything else, you're missing half the
It's
picture. And
incomplete. Yeah.
we are at a time now, if I can be prophetic about it, I suppose, where these two branches of understanding health are starting to come together. We're really at the beginning of it, I would say. And Western medicine, with integrative and functional medicine, with the NCCIH, which is a branch of the National Institutes of Health US organization, that's the complementary and integrative side. They're really starting to support the evidence base for these, quote, biofield practices. And that, to me, we're at a very exciting time. I'm looking like 10, 20, 50 years ahead. Like, yeah, now we're getting somewhere with healthcare. And I'm just going to crow a little bit and say that the practical path has just become a vendor for the U.S. Veterans Department's whole health program. And that is really significant.
Wendie, that's huge.
Yeah, it was a real honor to be part of this. And that means that their practitioners can join us for the medical intuitive training programs I teach and bring medical intuition into the VA. So how about that, right?
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Congratulations to you and to all the medical intuitives who've studied with the practical path, who are going to study with the practical path. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. It was just a complete honor. And
It's actually interesting because while Veterans Affairs would seem like it's probably one of the stodgier places in government, they're into some of the pretty cool stuff, some of the research that they've done, some of the energy practices and biofield practices that I know they've participated in research in or that they have brought into VA hospitals. They're a little more progressive than we might think they are.
well, I think the reason for that is that our veterans are some of the most impacted people, certainly with post-traumatic stress
Yeah.
and other health issues that kind of elude typical mainstream support.
Yeah.
And bless them for being so forward thinking, really.
And congratulations to the practical path for being part of it. That's amazing, especially the idea, not just that people can receive the work that you all do, but that providers can get trained
Yeah,
and begin doing that within that mainstream structure is
it's revolutionary.
mind-blowing. It is.
I'm very, very
That's so
tickled by
exciting.
that.
So exciting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, we were talking about your book. We're talking about practitioners and about, I know you had said, I think this particular quote was in your recent article, that intuition is available to everyone, right? We all have access to it. And the history that you just shared was remarkable. I do wonder, on behalf of many practitioners, you talk very clearly about like your ability to see in the body. And what about the folks who maybe are intuitive or maybe not so much yet, but who aren't seers?
Yeah. Well, I work with the mind's eye visualization because I want to see what's going on. I don't want to just intuit it or know it cognizantly or feel it empathically or hear it. I'm a big clairaudient too. I get a lot of hearing, but I want to see what's going on. And that came naturally to me as using the mind's eye. I was able to
Mhm.
do that just naturally when I started doing energy healing work. I started developing that skill. And I studied various forms of clairvoyance is the word. And
Yep.
like I've said before, that word clairvoyance, that'll clear a room of doctors in 3 seconds flat. They're out of there. They don't want to hear that. It's such a stigmatized, well, all
Oh,
intuitive
sure.
practices are completely stigmatized. And when I speak at healthcare conferences, integrative healthcare conferences, I usually get a line of doctors wanting to talk to me saying, I had this intuition and I couldn't tell anybody. It's like, I know.
You become the confessor for all the medical professionals.
And God bless them. They resonate with this. They want to see it available. They don't want to have to hide this from their colleagues or from their medical boards. We should be able to use this as a skill set, which has always been my focus. Let's just come on. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought.
Seeing, can you help learn?
Seeing,
Can
oh,
you help
seeing thing.
people learn to
Yeah.
see?
Most people, as particularly energy healers, are big empaths, right? Where they feel it all, either in their hands or in their bodies or their emotions. And that's such a beautiful, compassionate space to hold of empathy. However, it can really mess up your energy. You can end the day just completely overloaded, bombarded, and they're not alone. Nurses, compassion fatigue. What do you think compassion fatigue is?
Absolutely.
Burnout. It's clairsentient absorbing of other people's emotional trauma and everything. And that's a lot of people really revere that. And I don't disagree with them. It's a beautiful, compassionate way to be in life, but it will also really have an effect on your energy. And if you don't want that,
Right.
um, then one must learn, one ought to learn how to manage your own energy field so as not to take it on. And I'll segue here and say I started my self-study program for the public called Medical Intuition for Healing and Self-Care
Mhm.
because nurses would tell me back when I was teaching down in San Diego, I was a guest teacher at Scripps Cardiac Treatment Center, and they brought me in to teach. And I taught a lot of their nursing staff and whatnot. And they would say, look, I want to do your big program, but I don't have the time right now. Blah, blah. Do you have anything quick I can do? I'm like, yeah,
Nice.
I think I do. So I created some short audios for them, which are on the website, but I also created a long form program. It's a short course, about 6 or 7 hours, and that teaches people how to manage their own energy, how to ground, how to shield, how to use their mind's eye to start to talk to and listen to their own bodies. And that is where self healing happens. And that is where my self healing happened years ago when I was able to shrink a tumor on my own. It was a benign tumor, but I was able to reduce it by half in about 2 weeks just using mental visualization. And I'm like, there's something going on here. What is this thing, right?
Hmm.
So I want people, that's my goal. And I've taught this workshop for a lot of years, and we'll be launching the self-study program very soon. People love it and get a lot of value out of it because it's a dialogue between themselves and their bodies, right?
Well, and useful in so many ways. I mean, given all the things that you have shared with us, that gives me the ability then to speak with my own body, with my own biofield, with my own history, to understand where something may be out of balance, what I might do with it. And if I continue with your programs and I continue learning how to do this with other people, then if I'm a practitioner, this, like you were saying, this foundational piece gives me the information to be able to put a really effective program together for someone, right?
That's the idea is how do people can spend thousands of dollars going from one modality to the next modality. In fact, I was at a conference just recently. It came back yesterday, day before yesterday, and this was an energy conference, and people were coming up to the booth to talk to me saying, I don't even know which way to turn. They have a health issue. They can't get help from Western medicine because it doesn't fit within that paradigm
Yep.
necessarily. And so what do? And they've spent gazillion dollars trying all these things. Some work, some don't. My job is to query the body. What do you want? What's going to work here? What could move the needle potentially? And we can do this for ourselves. And I strongly recommend people think about that. Look into the program, go to the website and
Yeah.
thepracticalpath.com. We have a wait list going with a nice discount. So get on
Nice.
that wait list. And hopefully by the time this airs, it'll be live, but we're looking at the next couple of months here. And I really hope it helps a lot of people.
It'd be hard to imagine that it won't, right? I mean, it feels so beneficial really for everyone and for practitioners like our readers especially to be able to begin building that skill. Developing that visual sense is something that I know is really exciting for a lot of people.
It's a learning curve, Katherine.
Hmm.
It's one of the clairs that is not as quote natural for people, right? Empathy and clairsentience, claircognizance, knowing, I know what I know, don't know, gut
Right.
feeling, hunches. All of that is very common and actually very accepted in society. But clairvoyance, not so much. And so it does take practice and teaching. And also, let me just say that it's not the only way to do this work. There are
Okay.
teachers out there that teach various forms of clairs for similar ways of being. So I'm not saying that this is the only way to go, but I'm
Mhm.
saying that for me, it was the most effective way to go, and that's why I teach it.
Wow. We've talked about actually, I was going to ask about the practical path, but you've already revealed a great deal about it, including your extraordinary honor of being an approved provider for the VA, which is just mind-blowing. Is there anything else you'd want to be sure that our Energy Magazine readers know about medical intuition, about the practical path, or know me about the research that you're up to?
Sure. I'm going to suggest that anyone who's interested in the program come to the website, thepracticalpath.com, and take a look at our qualifications and give us a call if you have any questions. The programs are taught live online twice a year, and I'm myself and my teaching staff. And we get people from all over the world. So it's a really exciting community and a growing community. So come take a look at that. Come take a look at the Medical Intuition for Healing and Self-Care program. Get on the wait list. We'll get you going very soon. And National Organization for Medical Intuition, which is NOMI, N-O-M-I, medicalintuition.org. And join us, please, as a supporting member, as a medical intuitive professional member, as an organizational member. We have organizational memberships as well. We are a nonprofit org and we would love your support. Check out the book. You can get it on Amazon. Leave a good review if you like it. That's all the commercial right there.
And honestly, I mean, commercial, but it's all things that I know our readers are going to be really interested in. I myself am, and I'm probably going to be on that wait list myself. Uh,
Good.
so, Wendie, I want to say thank you so very much for being with us again. I know you're a fairly regular contributor to our magazine and provide beautiful articles. I've enjoyed every conversation you and I have had,
As have I.
and encourage all of you to visit Wendie's website and learn more about medical intuition and how it might serve you as well. All right. Thanks to all our readers. Wendie, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.